William John Bludworth was most likely born in or around 1964, and as a kid lived near Cloverdale, New York. I'm guessing his age based on the fact that he appears to be about 4 years old when we see him at the Skyview Tower in 1968. William was the son of a freelance rock and roll singer named Eva. The character is named in honor of a leukemia victim who is friends with one of Final Destination's producers, as explained by the actress Natasha Burnett.
I know it is spelt and sounds like it should be pronounced Evie, but it's actually Eva, as in forever.
And Eva would be memorialized forever in one of her favorite horror movie franchises by an actress named Burnett, who was originally destined to burn up in a fiery explosion before her life was saved by the vision of a clairvoyant. So it seems like from the chronological beginning, young William's story was surrounded by what appeared to be a series of morbid coincidences, something that would continue into his adulthood when he grew into the Bludworth namesake by becoming a coroner. But after having his first brush with death as a child, he would quickly learn. In death, there are no accidents, no coincidences, no mishaps, and no escapes. This is one of the many lessons Bludworth learns about death over the years. In fact, he seems to know a little too much about death. The movies provide us with more questions than answers about this character, leading fans to come up with their own theories and speculations. Is he the incarnation of death itself? Is he the devil? Or is he something else entirely? To learn how this young boy became the master of life and death seen in the Final Destination franchise, and to hear about his appearances you might not have seen, stick around to the end of this video. Welcome to Horror History. The YouTube algorithm doesn't like to be cheated, but today it is getting cheated because this is actually a remake of a video I did way back in 2020 going over the history of this mysterious morgue keeper and posting some of my own theories about the character. Theories that have aged very well with the new Bludworth lore introduced in Final Destination Bloodlines. This new info changes a lot of what we thought we knew about the character, so in this video I'm gonna re-examine his entire story and answer some of these long-standing questions. The Final Destination franchise has always done a great deal to pay tribute to the horror genre, naming many of their characters after classic horror icons. Everything from the original protagonist, Alex Browning, being a tribute to Dracula director Todd Browning, to the revival's protagonist, Iris Campbell, paying tribute to Evil Dead star Bruce Campbell. You can learn all about that in my Things You Missed episodes, but with William Bludworth, they paid a different type of tribute. Instead of naming the character after a legendary horror icon, they just casted a legendary horror icon, the Candyman himself, Tony Todd. Before I get into his history, I do need to clarify one thing about the timeline. We all know the title, Final Destination, is named after the plane crash from the first movie, Volée Flight 180. In Final Destination 1, this takes place on May 13th, 1999, but in its sequels, it's retcons to May 13th, 2000, which is the timeline I'll be using because it contains the most information on Bludworth's story. But to understand who Mr. Bludworth really is, let's take it back to his earliest chronological appearance in the series. William Bludworth's earliest known appearance was not a canonical appearance at all. We first see him in the clairvoyant vision of a bachelorette named Iris. Although Iris eventually intervenes to prevent her vision from coming true, there's still a lot we can learn about Bludworth from it. So let's begin the young Bludworth chronicles here. We first see little Bludworth, or as those close to him call him, JB, holding a toy train backstage at the Skyview Tower, wearing suspenders, a fashion choice that stuck with him over the years. His mom is performing there for the tower's grand opening and checks in on him between songs. JB's father is never mentioned. Maybe his job doesn't allow him to bring his kid along the way as his mom's does, or maybe Mr. Bludworth had his own brush with death. We have no way of knowing for sure. But he seems well behaved. Also, his mom seems to have a small bit of psychic ability of her own when she encounters Iris and becomes the first to sense that she's pregnant.
How far along are you?
What? Oh, no, I'm not.
Not even Iris's boyfriend knew about the pregnancy yet, so it seems that Eva has an ability for seeing things that others cannot, and if that's the case, maybe this ability has been passed down to her son, who she placates before heading back for 2 more songs.
Okay, it's almost over.
In his original destiny, the party bottoms out when the tower begins to collapse, chaos breaks out, and his mom closes him into a dessert cart for protection, which he later emerges from crying for help. Then he's picked up by Iris, who tries to carry him to safety, but the tower goes down, and they freefall 494 feet to the ground. None of this really matters though, because after seeing this panic-inducing preview, Iris plays party pooper and prevents the predestined peril by prying a penny away from a prepubescent prankster and pulling the proverbial plug on that precarious performance. That was a hell of a sentence. The only important part about Iris's vision is that Bludworth is the last survivor of the disaster. In the events that actually play out, Bludworth hears the commotion and makes eye contact with Iris, an event that would stick with him for years, until Iris eventually tracked him down and taught him everything she knew about the ways of death. Because by this time, Iris realized that death doesn't like to be cheated, and one by one, those who were originally supposed to die at the Skyview were all being taken out in bizarre tragedies. After the Skyview Tower survivors began getting knocked off by Death, Iris realized the pattern, learned about the techniques that Death uses to reclaim its victims, and tried to warn those that she could. This led to her tracking down William Bludworth and befriending him, which leads me back to one of my theories from the original video.
In each Final Destination movie, the protagonists have one thing in common. They are the visionaries that have premonitions to help them avoid Death's design. My theory is that long ago, William Bludworth was one of these visionaries. He realized Death was coming for him, and he avoided it. However, he was much more gifted than Alex, Kimberly, Wendy, Nick, or Sam, and he was able to avoid Death not one time, but continually. And as time went on, he got better and better at seeing the signs.
My COVID haircut is pretty bad, but the theory was pretty good. The only difference is that he was not the visionary, he was one of the people that she saved. And with over 200 people at the Skyview opening party, and many of them starting families who were never supposed to exist and thus also had to be taken out, it would be a long time until JB's number was up, because he was the last survivor in the premonition. Through trading ideas with Iris, and through watching the rest of the Skyview attendees and their descendants meet their grisly fate, he came to be a master of Death's design, which may also be what drew him to a career as a coroner in Mount Abraham, New York. It was something that allowed him to be close enough to Death to observe and learn, but far enough away that he wouldn't be in danger. He watched as his friend Iris became more and more paranoid and slowly withdrew herself from society. William helped her fortify her cabin. Not only was he helping out a friend, but extending her life meant extending the time until he was on Death's hit list. But this also made him the only one left on the outside who might be able to help any others who found themselves on Death's target. It seems like he wants to help these people, which might explain why he starts showing up at funerals whenever there's a big disaster with survivors. One such example was the funeral held by Presage Paper for the 17 employees who perished during the North Bay Bridge collapse of 2000. He tries to warn two of the survivors, Sam and Peter, about what is soon going to happen to them.
Death doesn't like to be cheated.
Excuse me? What's that supposed to mean?
You all just be careful now.
They chalk it up to him just being a creepy guy, and he goes on his way, whistling. It doesn't take long for his prediction to be proven true. Bludworth is called to Westdale College to pick up the remains of Candace Hooper, who had suffered a horrible accident in her gymnastics routine. And I'm not talking about her stumbling and the judges gave her a 6. Like, she died. At the scene of the accident, Bludworth makes eye contact with Sam, the man whose vision saved himself and 7 others during the bridge collapse. But he doesn't seem too adamant about making them believe that they're all on Death's list. It feels like he doesn't necessarily care if they take heed of his warning or not. He always seems willing to offer advice, but stays emotionally distant. Maybe he's tried to intervene before and seen how people react to being told that their time is about to be up. So this is his way of warning them, but detaching himself from the outcome. Or maybe he's just looking out for himself and Iris, and he's only offering them advice so that he can study their behavior, learn, and be better prepared when it's his turn. The next victim that Death catches up with is Isaac Palmer, who was done in by a series of accidents that occurred during his massage. Bludworth is once again tasked with picking up the body, but this time he's recognized by Sam, who asks him why he's at the scene of each accident. William tells him that he's simply doing his job and explains his cryptic warning.
It's just that I've seen this before.
This line is what initially made me think that he was a survivor, and the events of Final Destination Bloodlines tie in and bridge the gap to Final Destination 5 perfectly. No bridge pun intended.
A lucky few survive the disaster, and then one by one, death comes for them all.
He also tells them that they changed things on the bridge, that they created what he calls a wrinkle in reality. He's showing them that he's not only aware of how death operates, but he knows that something caused one of them to alter the course of history in order to escape. He does offer a solution though. If they let death take someone else in their place, they may be able to take that person's remaining lifespan.
Then the books are balanced.
In other words, they have to kill someone to extend their own lifespan. This is most likely one of the lessons that he and Iris learned from the other Skyview Tower guests, though we never actually see if this really works or not. I'll come back to this. William presumably is also responsible for cleaning up after Olivia, Dennis, and Nathan after each of them is unable to avoid death during a 2-week span at the beginning of May 2000. After that, he hears about how 6 students and a teacher got off of Volée Flight 180 from New York City to Paris before its crash, which occurred on May 13th. And he expects that 2 of the survivors will be visiting him at the morgue before long. This tells us that he's not just an expert on death, he seems to be able to predict when things are going to happen and even knows people's names when they've never met before. His first job after the plane crash was to pick up and examine Todd Wagner, who was previously believed to be a mental health statistic until William discovered cuticle lacerations, proving that Todd had actually been pulling on the wire that was wrapped around his neck and choked him. Todd had been trying to escape, which probably came as no surprise to Bludworth, who had seen the pattern of death catching up with accident survivors play out many times now. It looks like Death even tried to clean up the evidence after taking out Todd by having the water that he slipped on recede out of sight, but to Bludworth's credit, he doesn't fall for it. As predicted, he does get a pair of visitors that night, Alex Browning and Clear Rivers. He tries to get his point across to them.
In death, there are no accidents, no coincidences, no mishaps, and no escapes.
He tells them everything that happens is part of Death's design, and that their friend's accident proves that it now has a new design for them. They must figure out when their next appointment with Death is before it arrives. Bludworth's seemingly all-knowing apprehension about death, his generally creepy demeanor, his voice, and just the fact that his name is William Bludworth, like he's some kind of 2000s alt-metal frontman, has led many fans to believe that he is the human incarnation of death. And while I think Bloodlines has quelled that theory a bit, I think it's obvious that he's just another human as early as this scene, which is the first time audiences ever met Bludworth. For one, if Death is trying to reclaim the lives of those who escaped its grasp, why would he be warning them by giving them a heads up that Death is coming back at them? He also refers to Death and the Grim Reaper in the third person.
And you don't even want to with that Mac Daddy.
This time, he doesn't tell about the loophole where you can theoretically take someone else's life and be awarded their remaining years. I like to think this is because he actually has good intentions and doesn't want to see one of them turn into a killer like Peter Friedkin did a couple weeks before. So basically, he learned his lesson. It's better if people don't know about that rule. He says goodbye to Clear and Alex, telling Alex that he'll be seeing him soon. I originally thought that he knew that Alex's time was coming because he possessed some future sight of his own, but now I think it's just as likely that it's more simple than that. Bludworth has long since realized that no amount of advice can help anyone permanently escape Death's list. We don't see him for a while after that, but we can assume that he's involved in the autopsy of Terry Chaney, Valerie Luton, Billy Hitchcock, and eventually Alex Browning. Exactly 1 year after Volée Flight 180, there is another major accident, and once again, William Bludworth finds himself tangled up with the survivors. But this time, his belief that Death cannot be defeated would finally be challenged. Nearly a year after Flight 180, a girl named Kimberly Corman hears Bludworth's voice call out her name as she wakes up, but does not yet know whose voice it is.
Kimberly.
At the time, some people took this as proof that Bludworth's abilities were supernatural, but with what I know now, I would argue that it may actually be Kimberly who is supernatural. She's the visionary this time around whose foresight helps avoid a disaster, so it makes sense that she might dream about her upcoming encounter with Bludworth. That being said, I do think Bludworth has a small touch of psychic energy to help complete that connection. What follows is a huge pileup on Route 23 near Mount Abraham, New York that leaves William with a lot of work to do. There are 18 casualties, and there would be many more to come, due to the fact that Kimberly prevented herself and 7 other potential victims from getting on the road after having her premonition. Like the survivors of previous accidents, they too start to perish, only this time the order of their accidents is reversed from the order that they were destined to die in during the pileup. The first to go after the highway disaster is Evan Lewis, and while William takes care of the body, Clear Rivers, the lone remaining survivor of Flight 180, takes Kimberly and another Route 23 escapee back to his morgue to try to get some more information on how to survive. William is expecting them when they arrive.
Hello, Claire. I've been expecting you.
During this encounter, Bludworth is pretty chipper for a guy who is actively performing an examination on a corpse. After being pressed by a desperate Kimberly, he offers another clue, claiming that only new life can defeat death.
But the introduction of life that was not meant to be, that could invalidate the list. Force death to start anew.
His cryptic lines leave a lot of room for interpretation. Clear's take is that a survivor who gives birth to someone who was never supposed to be alive in the first place could reset the whole list.
If she gives birth to a baby that would have died in that car crash, a brand new soul that was never part of Death's design.
It throws the whole list out of whack and we start over with a clean slate.
However, this could not have been more wrong. We know now from the Skyview Tower incident that many would-be victims started families, and all it did was make the list longer and delay the inevitable. If you listen to Bludworth's explanation, it almost sounds more like a theory than something that he knows for sure.
Some people say there's a balance to everything. For every life, there's a death. For every death, there is a life.
But he never uses any language to suggest that this is anything more than an idea. And I think this is part of why he became a medical examiner and why he gets involved by talking to the survivors of these disasters. We already know that he and Iris exchanged ideas about escaping the grasp of death, so maybe putting some of the ideas into the heads of the targets is his way of testing these theories. For example, the theory that he told the Presage paper employees about trading in someone else's lifespan to extend your own is never confirmed because we don't have the Shinigami eyes. We don't know the remaining lifespan of anyone who was killed by another person. And none of the characters who kill end up lasting very long. But because he's this mysterious coroner who seems to have all the answers, everyone assumes that his word is gospel. And it's hard to blame them when he appears to magically know everyone who shows up in his office before they arrive.
You have to follow the signs, Kimberly.
How do you know my name?
We now know that he and Iris had been tracking all of the survivors and their descendants. That's most likely why he knows everyone. Now, does he also have a touch of psychic ability, perhaps inherited from his mom? Maybe. He's always been a character steeped in mystery, so I think this hint at his mom potentially having some power is meant to keep some of that mystery alive. Anyway, most of the would-be Route 23 victims still ended up on his table one way or another, but at least one of them would finally find a way to cheat death. After 67 seconds of stumbling around and incoherently spouting words describing imagery from her vision, yes, I counted, Kimberly Corman realizes what new life can defeat death may actually mean and drives an ambulance into a lake beside the hospital. This causes her to drown and soon after be resuscitated by doctors who use a defibrillator to get her heart pumping again, thus giving her new life. As far as we know, her and Officer Burke, who is also on the Route 23 list, survive, but we'll come back and revisit this shortly. Since the circumstances of Kimberly and Burke cheating death seem pretty difficult to recreate, it would appear that William Bludworth just carries on business as usual for the next couple years. I mean, it's not like he could just start telling everyone to drown themselves and have an EKG technician on standby. Plus, that's not really his style. He likes to be cryptic and stay a little more under the radar. As we see in early 2003 when he makes his first original novel appearance in Final Destination: Death of the Senses. Bludworth's office is based in Mount Abraham, which is in upstate New York, but he fills in for a colleague in New York City who is away on vacation, where he witnesses a unique iteration of the Flight 180 phenomenon. This one centers around Jack Curtis, the driver of the bus that ran over Terry Chaney in 2000. After losing his job, he became homeless, and as a homeless person, he was out on the street one cold night and experienced a vision, leading him to save the life of police officer Amy Tom from a serial criminal named John Doe. Now, all the victims that John Doe was supposed to kill find themselves on death's list. After the first victim, news reporter Chelsea Cox, is impaled through the eyes by a pair of icicles, Jack and Amy realize that the people from Jack's vision are dying, and decide to visit the morgue to try to learn more about this John Doe. Bludworth knows what they're there for, because death can sometimes tell you more about a person than life. He introduces himself as the mortician, William, but asks them to call him Bill. William, JB, Bill, this guy sure loves his nicknames. He's described as having a subtle glee in his eyes as he shows them the body, which seems to track with his previous appearances, and neglects to answer when Jack asks how he knew which body they were coming to take a look at. He runs through all the information he'd picked up about John Doe, and it's kinda cool to actually get to see Bludworth doing what he does best. He tells them that finding out the guy's identity isn't his department, but that doesn't mean that there isn't information for them. Oh, there's plenty more I can tell you, or rather, he can. The dead talk, if you just know how to listen. He cuts open the body, showing them John Doe's muscle composition, that he'd been training hard as of late, but not for very long, telling them that he'd been training for a specific purpose. They later find out what that purpose is. He's very similar to John Doe from CZsWorld, but instead of basing his crimes on the 7 deadly sins, he planned to base them on the 5 senses. Before leaving, Bludworth tells them, I do enjoy my trips down to the city. There's always so much going on. Thing is, sometimes events take on a life of their own, carrying on without the person who first set them in motion. If we're going by my idea that he's trying to learn as much as possible about death's patterns, it makes sense that he'd enjoy volunteering his time in the Big Apple. Like with Alex and Clear, he seems to be under the impression that death is a conscious entity rather than a force of nature. Like I said, spend enough time with death and you start to see his patterns. If those patterns get messed up, then boy does that get pissed off. Which is the second time he's referred to death having emotions, which I think makes it less likely that he was speaking figuratively. He leaves them with one last piece of advice. No one can help them, but they can improve their chances by looking for the signs. Unfortunately for them, this doesn't help, and everyone that John Doe was supposed to have killed is gone within a couple months. I wonder if at a certain point, Bludworth realized that even with his advice, most of those who came to him still ended up dead. Maybe he was starting to wonder if they were better off just enjoying their final moments instead of obsessing over beating death. He doesn't appear for a long time after that. In 2005, during the events of Final Destination 3, we do hear his voice, seemingly warning high school yearbook photographer Wendy Christensen about the danger that awaits her on the roller coaster Devil's Flight.
You can run, but you cannot hide. This is the beginning of the end.
This is probably the most nefarious sounding moment of his because of the laughter, but hey, at least he's given her a fair warning. Nick O'Bannon, the visionary in the 4th Final Destination, doesn't even get that. In the background, he stays in contact with Iris, letting her know about Kimberly Corman, who seemed to survive long-term after being resuscitated at the Lakeview Hospital. Iris documents this in her notebook. For a long time, it was unclear if Kimberly's actions actually got her off of Death's list. The Final Destination 3 DVD came with a special feature called Choose Their Fate, which contained a deleted scene from FD3 confirming Kimberly and Burke's death in a wood chipper incident. It was long debated if this was canon. However, both Bludworth and Iris seem to be under the impression that she broke the chain as of 2025. As for Burke, it's a little more unclear. At some point, Bludworth transferred to the morgue at Hope River Hospital. We don't know how closely he continued to monitor the descendants of the Skyview Tower survivors, but at some point, all of them died out except for him and Iris. But because he had helped Iris build her safe house, perhaps using some ideas he had learned from Alex Browning, Iris evaded death for a very long time, possibly as much as 14 years. But eventually, she was diagnosed with cancer. He helped her get the best medical care that he could, though I'm not sure what that entails if she refuses to go anywhere near a hospital. One day, in 2025, she was impaled by a weather vane, and Bludworth knew that his time was about to expire. Not long after Iris's passing, William gets sick as well, almost as if death knew that he, like Iris, wasn't going to be fooled by an elaborate Rube Goldberg-style killing. He makes the decision to retire and accept his fate rather than prolonging it like she did. But probably as a favor to his late friend, he sticks around just long enough to pass his advice on one last time. And as he predicted, it's not long before Iris's family shows up in his office.
I've been waiting for you, Stephanie.
As usual, he already knows who they all are, including knowing which family members have already passed. He's wearing the same outfits, the blue dress shirt, suspenders, and tie that he did 25 years earlier when he met Alex and Clear. And although it looks like he's in the best shape of his life at first glance, his already deteriorating body struggles to fill out his baggy sleeves. He tells them what he knows, seeming confident in his theories about killing or dying to postpone the Reaper's visits. But when Stephanie begs for his help, he's not interested in fighting the inevitable.
Fact is, you're all gonna die. And after that, I will too. Now that my old friend is gone, I'm retiring.
He already has a box packed up with his belongings, which can only mean that passing off this last piece of advice was the last thing he was waiting to do before hanging it up. But if you examine this interaction carefully, his advice to them isn't necessarily about trying to escape death. Sure, he does pass on his theories about invalidating the list, but it seems like his real advice can be found in his parting words.
I intend to enjoy the time I have left, and I suggest that you do the same. Life is precious. Enjoy every single second. You never know when. Good luck.
These final words would not just be a goodbye for William J. Bludworth as a character, but also for the actor Tony Todd. In real life, Todd had been quietly diagnosed with stomach cancer in 2023, shortly before signing on to Final Destination Bloodlines. The directors worked with him to create the backstory that would answer some questions about his motivations, while maintaining some of the mystery that made his character special. His final lines, in what would be his final on-screen appearance, were improvised by Todd, giving him the unique opportunity to say goodbye to his fans directly in one of the roles that defined his acting career, in a way that shows his love for his filmmaking craft. His self-eulogy comments on his own situation, where he one day discovered his time on Earth is limited and claims he's going to enjoy that time. For William Bludworth, that means retirement. But for Tony Todd, that meant stepping in front of the camera one last time. The incredible real-life story behind his final scene highlights the main lesson taught by his character. It's a battle of ideals. While Iris did everything she could to try to stave off death, William saw his friend totally upend her life to try to survive. To him, it wasn't worth it, and he decided to just accept the inevitable and enjoy what time he had left. I like this send-off for him, because it's actually a concept that has existed in the series as early as the opening of Final Destination 2.
What if you could do something about it?
Please, are you listening to yourself? I mean, this is crazy. You're saying that we should be on guard every morning when we leave the house?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
And by Bludworth living out his final days instead of cowering in fear of what might happen, he's making good on his observation from 24 years prior.
People are always most alive just before they die, don't you think?
We never learn how Bludworth dies, and in the spirit of maintaining the air of mystery around his character, I don't necessarily think we should. However, Bludworth would tell us to look at the signs. During his final scene, he still has the train he played with as a young boy, and the final disaster of Final Destination Bloodlines sees a violent derailment. If he was retiring, it's not out of the question to assume that he might have been on board, looking to finally leave town for good. But like some of his theories of death's design, we'll probably never know for sure. If you want to learn about the histories of other Final Destination characters, click that playlist on the left, and let me know who you'd like to see me cover. Also, check out my new channel, Pumpkin Metal, if you want to see band history episodes on pop punk and metal bands. If you love horror, horror, remember to subscribe to CZsWorld for new horrors every week, ring the death bell for notifications, and
I'll see you soon.
assuming we both survive.